Da var klokken 2 hos Nordnet Bank her i Akersgata. Hjertelig velkommen til dagens nettmøte og selskapspresentasjon med Film Electronics. Det har jo vært en aksje som har fått litt fart på seg siste, og vi har jo mye kunder også som handler denne aksjen hver eneste dag. Så i dag har jeg med meg Davor Sutija, han er CEO i selskapet, og så skal få lov å holde en presentasjon om hva som rører seg i selskapet, i tillegg til at dere også kan skrive inn spørsmål til Davor. Skal vi se, vi har holdt av 1 time på dette nettmøtet, hvor presentasjonen er ca. 20-25 minutter. Og så er det da for dere å skrive inn spørsmål til Davor underveis. Davor kommer til å holde presentasjonen på engelsk, men han forstår godt norsk, så dere må gjerne skrive spørsmålene deres på norsk hvis dere føler for det. Og da tar vi alle disse spørsmålene da, som sagt, etter presentasjonen. På skjermen deres så er det en liten pil til kontrollpanelet på GoToWebinar-programmet. På denne pilen så får dere muligheten da til å få ut et chatfelt. Der er det da bare å skrive inn spørsmålene til Davor. Og så er det jo greit å bare vise litt utviklingen som har vært. Her ser dere Thinfilm-chartet fra tidlig 2008 finanskrisetid, hvor det har vært store svingninger, og også nå siste 30 dager, hvor aksjen har steget betraktelig fra starten av mai, fra var vel nede i 2,20-2,25, og er nå jeg tok ut dette rundt 5,60. Så det har vært en fin oppgang. Hvis vi ser her på denne sliden, så ser vi at year to date, så har aksjen steget ca. 47,89%, med en market cap da på 3,8 milliarder NOK. Som jeg sa, det har vært stor interesse for våre kunder å handle Thinfilm. Her ser dere et lite chart hvor jeg da har sortert på number of trades, og der ser dere at hittil i år så har våre kunder i Nordnets, som dere ser her nede, gjort 47 000 handler i Thinfilm. Så det er derfor veldig gøy at vi også har fått de med oss her i dag. Hvis vi går litt videre, det er jo ikke alle som kjenner Nordnets så godt. Jeg skal bare si et par korte ord om oss. Vi er jo ikke bare norske, vi er en nordisk bank. Vi har kontor i Stockholm, Helsinki og København. Vi har over 500 000 kunder per dags dato. 73 000 av disse er i Norge. Disse kundene forvalter da 200 milliarder via sine Nordnet-konti. I tillegg til å tjene penger på at kundene våre handler aksjer, så driver vi også utlån av penger, hvor vi nå har lånt ut 7,4 milliarder penger. Hos oss så handler det jo da verdipapirer billig. Aksjer i inn- og utland. Det har blitt veldig populært med utenlandshandel for tiden, med selskaper som Fingerprint Cards i Sverige, Apple, Facebook i USA med mer. Vi har en fin plattform for handel av fond. Der har vi alle de norske kjente forvalterne, men også utenlandske aktører som JP Morgan, BlackRock, Fidelity med flere. Og det er også da gratis å både kjøpe og selge fond i Nordnet. I tillegg til det så har det blitt veldig populært med såkalte børshandlede fond, Exchange Traded Funds. Der har vi over 5,000 produkter nå, og det øker egentlig bare på, og det er en trend vi ser øke sterkt. Så her er det også sånn at så lenge du har en eller annen tro, enten om du er negativ eller positiv til et marked, en indeks, en råvare, en sektor, det kan være hva som helst, så finnes det muligheter da til å handle disse børshåndterte fondene. Så det er jo litt av grunnen til at vi er her i dag. Vi har ingen rådgiver i Nordnet som ringer og forteller deg hva du skal kjøpe eller selge, men det er jo vår jobb egentlig hver eneste dag å gi kundene informasjon om hva som rører seg i det finansielle markedet. Så kort litt nyheter. Mange trodde det var en aprilsnar når vi kom med enda lavere priser fra handel av aksjer i starten av april. Det var det altså ikke. Det vi, for å ta kortversjonen, har gjort, at vi har senket da minstekurtasjen med mellom 10 og 20 kroner. Så sånn at de kundene våre som handler for under 52 000 per sluttseddel, de har nå fått en vesentlig lavere minstekurtasje på denne minikurtasjen som man kan gå inn og velge selv under innstillinger. Vi har også samlet så at det lik pris i Norden, så om du handler i Sverige, Danmark eller Finland, så har du lik pris. Vi har også prøvd å imøtekomme kundene ved å ta ned utenlandshandel, ettersom vi ser at det øker. Vi har samlet prisen for Tyskland, Kanada og USA. I tillegg til at det også har blitt billigere for tradere og våre private banking-kunder som har over 2,5 millioner på kontoen sin. Så for eventuelle interessenter, nye kunder, så handler man nå, hvis man blir kunde i dag, aksjer fra 1 krone, 0,035 i kurtasje i Norden, og da har man det i både juni og ut juli, for de som skulle være interessert i det. Så med det så ønsker jeg velkommen til deg, Davor. Velkommen til Nordnets.
Thank you.
Skal vi se, skal vi hente opp din presentasjon. Så der. Da ser alle Davors presentasjon, så da gir jeg ordet til deg, Davor. Og så får du bare dra kundene gjennom det som er nytt på Thinfilm, og så skal vi ta spørsmålene når du er ferdig.
Takk skal du ha, Tommy. So first of all, thank you to Nordnet and to you, Tommy, to invite us here to be able to share an update with the market and with Nordnet's customers about Thinfilm. We announced with the Q1 results in the beginning of May that we had signed a term sheet for a new North American headquarters for the company. About 70% of our staff are now currently located in North San Jose in California, and with the new facility we will be able to upgrade and expand production to support global rollouts of our NFC products, OpenSense and SpeedTap, and that is really the core of what I'll be talking about today. This is to leverage the printing roll-to-roll of integrated components, the front-end die that is the heart, if you will, of an NFC label. And this enables what we call NFC everywhere. So before I continue, let me just state that we, of course, will be using some forward-looking statements. And those, you know, when I talk about anticipate or expect or plan, they should indicate future events and indicate trends. But I want to make sure that everybody understands the safe harbor provisions in this particular slide. Now, to give a little bit of a background for those of you who are unfamiliar with the company, Thinfilm is originally a Scandinavian technology company, but now with the majority of its activities in Silicon Valley. And what we are doing is we are manufacturing electronic components and electronic systems in a completely new way. We're using additive processes such as printing and roll-to-roll compatible manufacturing in order to make these components and systems. And the reason we're doing that is that over the last several years, there's been an increasing amount of interest in what many people were calling the Internet of Things. Now, conventionally, when people think about the Internet of Things, they think about wearables, or they think about Bluetooth accessories, or maybe even electric vehicles that really are essentially a computer on wheels. Now, these are all important examples of how the Internet of Things is already affecting our lives, but one thing has to be taken into consideration. Each one of these applications scales into the tens of millions or hundreds of millions, but not into the many billions of units. Now, if you want to extend intelligence, smartness to ordinary objects, then we believe that you need a paradigm shift, because the total number of silicon chips made today that are sophisticated enough to be considered a microprocessor is on the order of 20 billion, 30 billion per year. that is literally only 3 or 4 per person. So there's no way that one can imagine that one could tag apparel items and the trillions of consumables that are disposed of every year by using conventional electronics. And that's why we believe that with printing, with the use of roll-to-roll technologies, we will see the emergence of the Internet of Everything. And it is Thinfilm's role to catalyze the emergence of these new applications of electronics. So a little bit about our business model and the products to date in market. Generally speaking, we have launched a product line or a platform every year. In 2013, we announced our first commercial product, Thinfilm memory, and I'll come back to that in the next slide. We have since licensed the production of that to Xerox, the global printing company, and today we announced that Xerox was highlighting Xerox printed memory at the quadrennial Drupa show in Germany. This is the key event in the printing industry, and the Thinfilm memory-based Xerox product was highlighted at the Xerox booth there this year. In 2014, we launched anti-theft tags, what are technically known as electronic article surveillance tags that prevent shoplifting. Through a partnership with NEDAP, one of the leaders in this field, we delivered last year over 11 million units of anti-theft tags to the supply chain of one of the world's largest fast fashion retailers. So then we move forward into 2015 and 2016. Last year, we announced at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona that we had created a prototype smart bottle together with Diageo that used NFC to indicate whether a bottle was intact or had already been opened and potentially tampered with. This type of open sensing became a distinguishing element of our NFC product line. And starting in Q4, we started shipping pilot quantities to select customers in a number of different verticals. So these include areas such as smart medical devices, where Ypsomed is a publicly communicated customer, for smart injectables, in wines, Ferngrove and Barbadillo, and most recently in craft beers, Hopsy, a subscription craft beer service in the Bay Area directed at Millennials. Now, we also have a pending product launch in smart temperature labels, so that will be the 2016 product launches. Now, the important thing that I want to herald is that each of these is an increasing degree of complexity of product and a higher price point. So every year we launch products with more complexity, higher price point, and once we have showed commercial traction and a market, we then, as in the case of Xerox, find licensing partners and other partners to help us scale in the lowest CapEx way possible. But the important thing is that we always show that one can print these roll-to-roll first before we do licensing in order to create the most benefit for our shareholders. So a little bit more about Xerox, which we announced today was being shown at Drupa. There is significant traction in many different areas, including as a tax stamp solution for regulated products. The technology transfer took a year. It went exactly as planned. And the plant that has been set up in North New York State in Rochester is at a Xerox manufacturing location and has up to 1.3 billion units of capacity. Now, this is a product that Thinfilm originally took to market in 2013. We have made some sales, but it is Xerox that is now integrating it with their cryptographic technology to create not only a standalone Xerox printed memory, but also a Xerox printed memory with cryptographic security. We're very excited by the developments here and announced early this morning that the tech transfer has now been successfully completed. Now, the fact of the matter is that the main interest in Thinfilm today has to do with our wireless product roadmap. I think it's very exciting that we're creating electronics in a new way using printing, but what is exceptionally important about this is that the electronics that we are creating can communicate directly with smartphones by a simple tap using an NFC inside the smartphone. So in Google Play Store, for example, we already have the Thinfilm authenticator that when you tap a product with a Thinfilm OpenSense or SpeedTap label, can tell you if the product is sealed, if it's OpenSense, and it can also identify the unique ID and therefore tell you if the product is authentic. Now, SpeedTap also uses the same type of tapping, and I'll get back to why we call it SpeedTap in a minute. But here, you not only can encode a unique ID, you can also encode a mini URL and directly take the consumer to the website of the brand's choice, either for mobile commerce. For example, for wines, you could get a winery tour or some information on how to use the product, tasting notes or food pairings or other information about how the product was manufactured. On the brand side, we also, starting in Q3, will be offering a dashboard and analytics visualization platform that allows brands to see the tapping that occurs in real time globally when consumers interact with their products. Now, this is extremely important because mobile marketing today and an increasing amount of advertising dollars is going to the mobile channel either has to do with consumers scrolling through a number of mobile pages until they get to the one of interest, or more often, they use a search engine to find information about a product. But as you will know by using your mobiles, when you type in something into one of the leading search engines, such as Google, what you get is what the search engine would like you to see. By tapping using NFC smartphones, it is the brand that is orchestrating the dialogue. So they can make sure that the interaction is fresh every time you tap. And they can not only give you information about the product, but introduce you to loyalty programs and, in fact, the entire e-commerce channel. So from the point of view of the brand, if they use OpenSense, they can distinguish from the buying situation when the product is still closed and the consumption situation once use has started. So they really can create an omni-channel experience for the consumer. So this dialogue, as I mentioned, is everything from authenticating and certifying the freshness of a product. And 70% of red wine in China is not authentic. And even 60 Minutes in the United States documented that the vast majority of extra virgin olive oil sold in North America is in fact not extra virgin. So the need for authentication, the need for confirmation that this is a product that meets the quality standards that the brand aspires to is certainly there. And millennials don't want to read instructions. They want to be able to understand how to use the product using their mobile. So favorite recipes, cross promotions, and of course, the entire area of e-commerce and special offers. That is what both SpeedTap and OpenSense unlock for brands. Now, I mentioned millennials because targeting millennials is really the objective here in many key vertical markets. As we already shared earlier, we have delivered to more than a dozen of the world's largest brands, and these are in categories such as craft beers with Hopsy, which we announced in May, and I welcome you to look at the Hopsy video on YouTube. I think it's really very compelling. They call it the genie in the bottle when they have NFC on their growlers. And Hopsy is an up-and-coming subscription model for the distribution of craft beers, wine and spirits, tobacco, both over-the-counter and prescription pharma, health and beauty products, including cosmetics, subscription boxes I've already mentioned with Hopsy, but the entire area of a new way, a disruptive way of bringing product to customers from a subscription model, I think is perfectly aligned to adding intelligence to the boxes themselves so that customers can instinctively reorder. We see that people are also creating Bluetooth buttons at $3 or $4. It is much more economical and simpler to add NFC to products to have that interaction. We also have delivered to specialty foods companies. That's the last of the categories that we're mentioning here. But there's one category that I think is important that is not precisely targeted to millennials, and that is smart medical devices. Here, what we're trying to do is to actually improve patient outcomes. And this, I think, is an extremely important objective. We hear mobile companies now launching digital medicine initiatives in developing countries. We also hear from the major OEM manufacturers the desire to create health kits. And one of the companies, and we're very proud of this association, is with a leading Swiss medical products company called Ypsomed. They have many of the leading pharma companies as their customers, and they have created a 50 million Swiss franc program in next-gen injection and infusion systems, and OpenSense is one element of their Ypsomed Smart platform. So Ypsomed and Thinfilm are continuing work to commercialize Ypsomed Smart, and we intend to commercialize that in 2017. So why now? Why is the interest in thin film growing, and why is now the right time to start planning for not only tens of millions of capacity, which is what we have today using sheet-based manufacture of transistors? Why do we need to start planning for 1 billion units or maybe even multiple billions? The answer is that the latest phones on Android are all NFC ready and compatible with thin film tags. So if we see on this next slide, we see that the number of phones today that can interact with thin film has already started reaching 700 million phones globally, and that means in certain markets such as the Bay Area, the vast majority of millennials have phones that interact with our tags already. But 2 years ago, the number is only 1/3. And 2 years from now, the number is going to triple again. So by 2018, 2019, there will be approaching 2 billion Android phones that can interact with NFC tags such as thin films. Now, this is even before Apple opens up their NFC, which is inside all the latest Apple phones. They're currently restricted to Apple Pay, and it's difficult to predict what Apple is going to do, but if they were to open up their platform, then the numbers here would get even substantially larger. Now, I do want to note that Android is taking share from Apple, so that the vast majority of phones globally are going to be NFC ready by the time that our roll-to-roll production line would be available to supply NFC tags to market by the second half of 2018. So why are people using thin film? Well, first of all, we have an exceptionally fast read rate, less than 5 milliseconds, while the standard silicon chip-based tags are at least 20 times slower, maybe even 60 times slower with encrypted tags. And in addition, they cannot be cloned. Every single NFC tag from thin film has 128 bits that has been pre-inscribed with a unique ID and a unique protocol flag. That means that we have the ability to ascertain that this is an authentic thin film label and in fact is associated with a particular product. So this means that major organizations such as ARC Worldwide, the digital activation portion of Leo Burnett, have become our partners in Q1. They see the opportunity for sending both pre- and post-purchase messaging to smartphones and making this a game changer for marketeers. Understanding who a brand's customers are has really been the goal of marketeers for years. So we also work with retail solution providers such as Tata and preferred converter suppliers. And one thing I want to mention here is that the die that we're going to be manufacturing in the new facility is going to be one die for a multiplicity of products. There will be different antennas, different labels that are die cut, but there'll be one electronic circuitry that will both supply the core electronics for SpeedTap as well as OpenSense. And with companies like Constantia Flexibles and Jones, we will be able to support a multiplicity of customers with different SKUs. So now to the core of the case. For a relatively moderate capex of between $18 and $32 million, we now know that we can order and install equipment by the end of next year that can produce up to 5 billion OpenSense and NFC SpeedTap equivalents. This is significantly larger in quantity than the estimates we made a year ago when we did a confidentially marketed public offering in the United States. At that time, we believed it would take 25 million in capex to get 1 billion in capacity. We now know that that lower end of production capacity will only cost 16 million in equipment and about 2 million in project costs. So we have the flexibility, depending on the visibility we have with customers, to go anywhere from a $16 to $30 million equipment capex with a $2 million project budget. But this means that with the types of gross margins that we have always communicated to market, approximately 30%, we have an exceptional opportunity to grow revenues and make the transition from being a product company to being a fully commercial company. So we expect to be able to be in an engineering situation to make these capex decisions already by the end of Q3 of this year. And with a 9 to 12 month delivery of equipment, we think that in the new facility, which we will enter sometime in 2017, that already by the end of next year, we will be able to produce anti-theft tags. And by the middle of 2018, we'll be producing NFC front-end die by roll-to-roll additive manufacturing. So this move to the expanded fabrication facility, which we communicated during the Q1 report, really is about being ready for the volume demand that we're expecting from consumers. And I said EAS production anticipated first. We're now in negotiations for an expanded order from our fast fashion retail customer through NetApp, and we expect also to get more visibility on the NFC side. Now, why is this important? In addition to just scaling volumes, the total cost goes down by almost an order of magnitude for the front-end die, which lowers the cost of the product to our customers by more than a factor of 2. We become material cost limited. And what's extremely exciting, because we do this manufacturing on thin metal foil, we can actually get to thinnesses that are thinner than silicon can achieve at any reasonable cost. We're currently at 100 microns. We will soon be somewhere between 50 and 75 microns once the roll-to-roll line is in production. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'd like to open the floor for questions.
Good, Davor. Det har kommet inn allerede masse spørsmål, takk for det. Som sagt, på kontrollpanelet deres på skjermen, det er en liten oransje pil, trykk der. Dere får muligheten da til å se et lite chatfelt. Der skriver dere inn deres spørsmål til Davor. Skriv gjerne disse inn på norsk hvis dere vil det. Jeg ser at noen også har kommet inn på engelsk. Så jeg kommer bare kort og godt til å lese gjennom de som der, og så får du bare prøve å svare så godt det lar seg gjøre, Davor. Og så, ja, hvis det er ting du har vært gjennom før, så får du bare utbrodere eller ta litt mer om det. Starter med første spørsmål. How is your position with regards to competitors?
Yes, so I think that there are two aspects of this. There are many companies that are in the general area of what is known as printed electronics, but we're relatively alone in printing roll-to-roll electronic systems. There are many companies in photovoltaics or in displays. So for example, the organic LEDs that are going to go into flexible displays also include some elements of printing. But in the niche field that we're in, we're considered a global industrial leader. But that doesn't mean that we don't have competition. Of course we do. The competition comes from people who are using standard electronics, silicon chips, to try to make these types of products. And there are already 2 billion NFC labels manufactured last year using conventional silicon. Now, those are generally separated into those that are used for banking or stored value solutions, for example, Oyster cards or different types of access security, or the cheaper unencrypted style. And so the reason that we believe we have an incredible competitive advantage is we have a lower cost point when we're at roll-to-roll compared to the encrypted solutions, but at the same time we have more security, we have flexibility, and we don't have the brittleness of silicon. And remember, we're only 15 microns thick and can be read in 5 milliseconds. That means you can apply our labels to ordinary packaging, and in a factory setting, even at 16,000 labels per hour or higher, you can read each one and sort out the ones that are non-working. And in the NFC industry, as a general rule, there's several parts per thousand that don't work with silicon chips. In our solution, the customer, the packaging partner, can make sure that every single ID goes to a known market and that it has left the factory in perfect working order.
So next question, when do you expect to start earning money?
Well, I mean, I think that we have to be very careful about those types of forward-looking statements. I mean, we do not typically offer financial guidance. I can say that there are analyst reports on Thinfilm, and I would encourage readers who are Nordnet customers to also potentially look at Edison Reports. That's a UK firm that does research on us, as well as in the Nordic market, Arctic Securities does some research, as does Cowen in the United States. So I think in some of these cases you can look for indications when analysts believe that we will start earning money, and with the types of margins and cash flows that our roll-to-roll investments indicate, it would seem appropriate to say that if things go according to plan, analysts predict that we will be in a positive cash flow net of new investments, in the coming 2 or 3 years.
Du nevnte Arctic som dekker dere. Hvorfor tror du ikke det flere?
Yeah, I think that that's always a little bit of a challenge in the marketplace today. There has been a consolidation of coverage. I think that there's more of a chance that new brokerages will start covering us because, as you indicated in the beginning, the amount of trading in our share has increased.
Absolutely.
So we're now one of the 30 or 40 most traded shares on the Oslo Stock Exchange, and I think that if you go back just 2 or 3 years, the amount of trading was negligible. So the fact that Nordnet is the number 2 in the number of trades, I think is an indication that we have created broad appeal to investors because we've been able to document our story. One of the things that happened earlier this year is that one of the most well-known investors in the United Kingdom, Neil Woodford, in his new funds under the Woodford Investment Management Group, they decided to invest in Thinfilm in the amount of $42 million. Now, they invested at 3 crowns, and which was in fact 8% over the last 10 days close. So they paid a slight premium to invest in Thinfilm. They did get some warrants, but it was only 25% warrant coverage, which was the smallest amount of warrant coverage in all of our financing rounds. Now, the combination of more liquidity and our investor list, our shareholder top 50 holdings, become much more institutionalized. I think is a harbinger that maybe more analysts are going to look at the stock and start following us.
So the next question is maybe the same as the one you already had in the beginning, but who are your major competitors working in the same field as Thinfilm with printed electronics, and are they already penetrating the market?
Yeah, I think in printed electronics, I have to be very clear. The only two organizations that have tried to do near-field communication using these types of additive printing processes, there was a Korean university that a few years ago used organic transistors and was able to create prototypes of 8 bits of NFC. So there's been research work in this area. I think that more recently people have looked at hybrid solutions. There's research work at the Holst Institute in the Netherlands. And there are also some smaller companies, literally startups, that are looking at things that are perhaps better described as extensions of conventional electronics, such as in-print lithography, to try to get to electronics that are complex enough to be similar to what Thinfilm does. But you know, it's very difficult to do this from a standing start. The reason that we were able to do this is that 2 years ago we acquired the assets of a company called Covio that already had over 200 patents in the area of anti-theft tags, NFC, printed silicon, printed dopant inks, and over $110 million was invested in that company since its founding by Vinod Khosla. I mean, Vinod Khosla of Kleiner Perkins, who is famous from some of the biggest success stories in Silicon Valley, he was the one who founded Covio back in 2001. So Thinfilm on its side also can point to over $100 million of investment before I joined the company, and that led to the focus on roll-to-roll additive printing technologies, first for memory, then for displays, and now for both batteries and logic. So if you look at the amount of investment that Thinfilm and the companies we acquired have made, it's over $300 million over a time period stretching back 15 years. You know, it is not trivial for somebody to just set up a company and start competing with us. Now, silicon on flexible substrates, there are many people who do that for displays or for photovoltaics. So companies such as Samsung or many of the flexible thin film PV companies, they have some of the elements that are necessary for putting down silicon, but we have the ability to passivate the metal substrate we use to get the right grain structure and to be able to create circuits. You know, when we acquired Covio, we could make 750 circuits per die. Now in some of our devices, it's up to 1,800. What we see is a Moore's law in this type of printing electronics. So the complexity of our devices, as I said earlier, is increasing every year, and Thinfilm, with now 295 patents and growing, is the technology leader and the commercialization leader in this, you know, what I would say is a revolutionary wave and building electronics in a completely new way.
The next question is, when will you deliver the remaining 1.8 million tags to NetApp? Is there any modification difficulties as to why it has not been fully delivered yet?
Yes, I mean, I think we were very, very clear in the Q1 report that some of the manufacturers of clothing for the fast fashion retail customer had difficulty in using what are known as dry inlays. So there was a request to further process some of the labels to a wet inlay format, and we have been working with NetApp to accomplish that and expect to ship the remainder of the order as we finish that transition. So we're working on it currently, but we're not giving any forward-looking statements on particular commercial accounts or on precise financials.
What kind of new product should we expect to be added to Thinfilm's product line? Will Thinfilm be offering software products as well, is the question.
I think that's an excellent question. I mean, first of all, in terms of platforms, we have stated that in 2016 we expect to also commercialize in small scale the temperature sensors, both closed systems and potentially also NFC readable. But the question, I think, really centers on our plans in the area of software and extending our solutions in that domain. And I do want to say that we already have an application in Google Play that is for older phones to be able to interact with our tags. We have the authentication platform that is also there. So we have put some apps into Google Play Store, but I think that the more important aspect is what I talked about, the SDK and the visualization tools that we expect to launch in Q3. We will be providing an in-the-cloud solution for our customers, brands, to be able to do cloud-based lookup of IDs to match it to the products, so that they can also, if they so choose, also store in our cloud solutions the taps that are occurring on their products. Now, tier 1 brands probably want to take that first-party data and store it themselves. We do not intend to go into the business of creating user experiences or UI. That is why we're partnering with ecosystem companies such as Arc Worldwide, the global leading digital activation firm, because they really understand digital marketing and how to appeal to consumers. But what we want to do is we want to lower the barrier to adoption of our NFC solutions. So that's why Christian DeLay, formerly of Yahoo and most recently of IAC and OboPay, who is an expert on monetization, joined the firm in the beginning of April to work on the roadmap of software solutions. And he's building a team to develop software solutions to support the ease of digital activation for our partners.
And there's a couple of questions regarding the Xerox memory. The Norwegian one is, do you have a comment on how do you say it?
The last developments.
The last developments of Xerox memory. And the English one is, what kind of revenue can Thinfilm expect from the Xerox license agreement, and will modifying of the new production line transfer any cost to Thinfilm or lower the capex for more equipment in the future?
Yes, so the investments that Xerox is making in the production line are completely their own. In fact, we have delivered equipment for testing to Xerox that was part of our Q4 revenues as part of the technology transfer. So there is a moderate amount of income from Xerox to Thinfilm as part of the investments they made to build that line. And the entire purpose of having a partner like Xerox is to have a way of scaling production without Thinfilm bearing the cost of the capital equipment. Now, the revenues to Thinfilm then become license revenues. And as this is a new technology, they start in double digits, and over the life of the product, and as production potentially scales further from the current capacity levels, then this will follow deal book rules on license agreements, and over time will go to the mid-single digits. Now, this is a standard way of doing licensing, and we think it's extremely beneficial. Now, we don't believe necessarily that this is going to affect our cost of equipment in the future. This is Xerox lines that have been modified for production, and our focus now is on the next platform, the NFC products, but also soon on the temperature sensors. There, as we showed in the annual report, in Sweden, where we formerly were producing memory, we now produce printed displays, and later this year we'll start printing zinc polymer batteries. And that, I think, is extremely important, because we have found a way to print these batteries in a completely printed process that doesn't use any solvents that are not compliant with the REACH and RoHS. So we have the opportunity to create a truly environmentally friendly battery for these types of disposable applications.
Can we expect several production lines for Xerox memory in near time future?
Well, you know, I don't want to speak on behalf of Xerox. I think it's extremely important that they're highlighting us as one of the pillars of technology at Drupa. As you may know, Xerox is splitting in two this year. And so a portion of Xerox is the services portion is becoming an independent entity. So Xerox, the remaining portion of Xerox is really refocusing on being a technology company, and we're very proud of our relationship with Xerox and helping them achieve their aims in this type of additive printing technologies.
Så det to spørsmål, både et norsk og et engelsk, som det samme. Hva Thinfilm sine fremtidige utfordringer? What do you see as the major threats going forward?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that Thinfilm as a company now needs to focus on to make that transition from being a product company to being a commercial company. You know, a year ago, we announced for the first time the availability of a brand new type of NFC tag that was made using printing. You know, when we were at Mobile World Congress in March of last year, we had a few prototypes. We went into large-scale production in Q4, and also have recently qualified the entire product, including the back end, you know, under ISO certification, also for all of our supply chain partners. So currently we have a dual supply chain also for the back end, and this is, I think, of extreme importance. So the biggest challenges for us will be to manage the growth and to also help our customers as they trial things in a sandbox. I mean, what we've stated very clearly is that this year it's all about pilot orders and developing prototypes. We've developed many different types of antenna designs and die cuts. You know, there's more than 6 different antenna designs for different customers. You know, for example, cosmetics uses a very thin antenna. Some products have open sense with a long tail. Others require a very stubby tail, and then SpeedTap has a square antenna. So each of these modifications requires work with our conversion partners. So I think that the challenges going forward will be to then take these sandbox experiments and really show, you know, when is the heartbeat happening? When are people tapping? What are the experiences that are getting consumers to interact with product? That's why we're also very keen on working with smaller brands that are targeted to millennials, such as Hopsy, to get very quick experience from them on what is compelling to millennials. This is going to be important for the major brands we're working with across the many verticals we're talking about. So for us, the biggest challenges are to convert the excellent experiences of our lead first mover customers and make them part of the wholesale global rollout that we expect over the next 2 years.
But Davor, you are talking about pilot orders, so to speak, but when can we expect to see OpenSense in the stores?
Well, I mean, we already have shipped to market Barbadillo. Now that is a high-end sherry that is not available in every store. Hopsy is delivering their subscription service to customers in the Bay Area from July onwards, and we expect to have a product in the Chinese market together with Ferngrove and potentially other customers in Q3. I think that you'll see that many of our larger fast-moving consumer goods companies are doing internal trials, and so it probably will be a couple of quarters or maybe even 3 quarters before they become more generally available. But we are working with customers also in the European and North American markets for introduction to retail. So we'll just have to see how those things develop over the next few months.
Så det en kunde som spør, har du aksjer selv I Thinfilm?
Absolutely. I have both shares myself and also my family. We have essentially a holding company called Duca Consult. Between the two, I have 2.7 million shares in the company, and I also have several million subscription rights. So I think that on a fully diluted basis, it's a little bit more than 1% of the company.
Do you see any questions here that we haven't answered yet? Maybe the last one. Is Apple opening NFC key for your success in the luxury product segment? What will you do if they don't?
Well, I think that there are two elements of this. I mean, the luxury market is not just one market. I think you'll see quickly that there will be some luxury brands that use us. For example, Germany, Spain, are 70-80% Android, and even the UK is well over 50%. So I think Scandinavia is relatively Apple friendly, but that is not representative of the entire world. China, for example, has a very significant luxury market that is centered very much on Android as well as Apple. So I really, of course, I look forward to when Apple decides to open up. They have joined NFC Forum last October. They have started indicating that they want to support additional applications. HealthKit is one thing they announced 2 months ago. They tied it to Bluetooth, but I think it's more generalizable than that. And last month, we also saw, for example, the CEO of Orange suggesting that, as more and more cash points in the world start, integrating NFC, it can't only be Apple Pay that is the only mode of payments done with a smartphone. So I think you'll see a significant amount of interest also from our major customers. Many are really planning for the time when the general public is able to interact with ordinary objects using NFC. And I think that time is coming, but I don't want to make any statements on behalf of a particular OEM.
So Thinfilm stock has momentum. We're soon into the summer. So the question is, what is the work pipeline for this summer? What is the triggers going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of interesting things that are going to be happening in the company over the next weeks and months. We have signed a term sheet on a new facility. We have stated that we're now doing a due diligence on that site that includes environmental aspects of the site. We're not buying the site ourselves. It is being bought by a developer, and we have signed a term sheet on a long-term lease. And I think that that due diligence we expect to conclude in the next several weeks, and hopefully be able to announce entering a final agreement sometime in July. We also expect, because we're continuing negotiations, to announce further orders for both the anti-theft product, but also on the NFC side. And I think that you will also see on the sensor platform side progress towards commercialization. So I think in all of the different areas, we have activities that will make it an active summer for the company. I certainly see a lot of activity, and really looking forward to the summer and the early fall.
And there are some questions about M&A plans. Are there any plans of M&A? Who would be interested in buying Thinfilm?
Yeah, I mean, a company like Thinfilm is built to last. The goal of management is to create a commercial company that has substantial revenues and cash flows. It is, of course, always up to the board's discretion to look at opportunities, for different solutions for shareholders. But I think that management is committed to increasing shareholder values by the growth of the company, primarily organically. I mean, in terms of corporate development, I mean, we do license in technology when appropriate. So we have licensed in both battery and display technology. We have previously acquired Covio, as you know, which gave us new logic technology. And I think with a new CFO coming on board early this fall, Ole Ronny Torsnes comes, from a Norwegian perspective, he has really quite a pedigree. He went to Induc at NTNU and then was at McKinsey for several years before now being a vice president at Orkla. So he has worked really on the strategy of making Orkla pure play in packaged consumer goods. And I think that means that he has a very good understanding of the vertical markets where Thinfilm will be applying its solutions. So, we really are looking forward to having him join the company. And, so corporate development is always an agenda item that we evaluate as the need arises. But I think that the focus is on building the company through a strategy of investment and growth.
Det har jo blitt satt litt til rette emisjoner både mot for eksempel Ferd og også Woodford, som du sa. Og da kommer jo alltid en del spørsmål om the funding. How are you funded going forward? Is there any need for further cash?
Well, I think that we are in a very fortunate situation that with the funding from Woodford Investment Management at the end of Q1, we had nearly $50 million on the balance sheet with no debt. So that certainly, we have stated that covers the operational expenses through 17, and that really gives us time to work to build the company through growth. Now, we have always been very clear that the CapEx program to roll manufacturing will require additional investment that was not part of the last funding round. Now, in those funding rounds, there are outstanding warrants that are now in the money. Over time, some of those expire next year. They may provide additional capital, but the company will always look at alternatives on how to finance that roll-to-roll production. I think that, given the revenue potential and the very significant potential cash flows from these kinds of facilities, I think that there's a number of alternatives that the company could avail itself of.
Perfect. I think we have been through most of the questions as I can see it, but we are 3 minutes away from closing this session, but do you have any famous last words for the listeners?
Well, I think it's been an incredible journey. I look back on joining the company about 6 years ago, and we were just meeting a number of investors here in Oslo, as we indicated earlier this week when we introduced this presentation to the market. People have looked back to where we were in 2010. At that time, we said that it would take approximately 5 years to get to NFC product, and it actually took 5 years. Now we're predicting it's going to take about 3 years to get to a high volume manufacturing of electronic logic, roll-to-roll, and I'm extremely excited that over the last 9 months, the engineering teams, both in Zankerode in San Jose, but also in Linköping, have worked so well together to be able to reduce the CapEx numbers necessary and to increase the potential production volume. And at the same time, creating new differentiators for the company. We will be able to make the thinnest electronics at a reasonable price on Earth, 50 microns thick on foil and not brittle. So I think we will have a number of unique selling points when this facility is operational in 2017, 2018, and I really look forward to the coming years. We've gone from being an IP company to a development company to being a product company. Now it's the exciting transition from going from a product company to a fully commercial company. That's right around the corner.
Det blir spennende å følge dere videre, og det sikkert ikke siste gang vi har Davor med oss, som det sikkert så av interessen til alle Nordnet-kunder for både trading og langsiktige investeringer i Thinfilm har vært store det siste året også, så takk for at du var med oss her i dag, Davor, og så takk til alle dere som stilte spørsmål. Vi legger alltid opp disse presentasjonene på vår YouTube-kanal Nordnet Norge, Så stopp gjerne innom der, og der legger vi også ut alt annet av videomateriell. Og ha en riktig så fin dag videre.